frozen footsteps, the wind howled like a wild beast. Snow flew sideways through the black night, biting skin like sharp knives. Jera wrapped her arms tighter around the small bundle in her chest. Her daughter wasn't moving. Her little face was pressed against her mother's chest, lips pale, breath weak. Jera's body trembled. Not just from the cold, but from fear. The ice beneath her feet cracked with every slow step. Her boots were torn. Her fingers were numb. She had already walked for hours through this frozen land, her long alien coat stiff from frost. Her people had left her to die. She could still remember the gate slamming shut behind her. You failed your task. You're of no use now, they told her. You and your offspring don't belong here anymore. She had begged, cried, fallen to her knees. But it didn't matter. The rules were clear. Weak ones, especially females with no value, were pushed out to the wild. And in the wild, there was only snow, wind, and death. Jera looked up through snow-covered lashes. In the distance. Was that a light? She blinked hard. A faint glow, yellow, small, almost hidden. She didn't know what it was, but her legs moved. One step, another. She slid on ice, fell, landed on her knees. Pain shot through her leg, but she pulled herself up. Her daughter let out a soft sound, barely a whisper. I know, baby, Jera said, lips cracking with every word. Hold on a little longer. The glow came from a building. Square, low, and silent. Metal walls were covered with ice. It had a human symbol on it. Jera didn't understand it, but she had heard rumors humans sometimes lived out here. Some were dangerous, some were kind. She didn't care anymore. Even danger was better than freezing to death. She reached the metal door and banged her fist. No answer, she screamed, but the wind stole her voice. Jera slid down against the door, clutching her daughter. Don't go to sleep, little one, she whispered. Don't go to sleep, but her daughter didn't answer. Her eyes started to close. She was too cold, too tired. Her body was shutting down. Inside the building, a man named Eli sat by a small heater. He was alone. It had been months since anyone visited this outpost. He liked the quiet. He liked being away from the chaos of the cities. But suddenly, a blinking light appeared on his monitor. Motion detected. Zone 3, he grabbed his thermal rifle and coat. Maybe it was just another broken drone. Or a snow fox. Still, he stepped outside. The cold slapped his face like a hammer. His boots crunched through snow. Then he saw it. Two bodies, one big, one small, curled up at his door. What the hell? He muttered and rushed forward. The woman was barely breathing. Her skin was bluish-gray. Not human, alien. She had strange marks along her neck and hands. Her hair was frozen to her shoulders, but it was the child that shocked him most. So tiny. So still. No way I'm letting kids freeze on my watch, Eli said. He scooped them both into his arms and kicked the door open. Inside, the heater was on full. He wrapped them in thermal blankets and turned up the heat. The woman's eyes fluttered open for a second. She stared at him, weak, confused. Safe, she whispered. Just save her. Then her head dropped and she passed out. Eli checked the girl. She had a pulse, faint but real. He rubbed her hands, then gave her warm water drop by drop. Slowly, her fingers twitched. You're tough, little one, he whispered. He didn't know who they were or why they were out there, but he saw enough. These two were on the edge of death, and the mother had used all her strength just to keep the child warm. Eli sat back, watching the sleeping figures outside. The snowstorm screamed louder. But inside, something had changed. A moment ago, he was alone in the cold. Now, two strangers lay under his roof. One had chosen to die in the cold to save her daughter. The other had chosen to open the door. And far behind the storm, Deep in the snow dunes, dark shadows moved silently. Watching, hunting. Eli hadn't slept all night. The woman was still unconscious, her body wrapped in 3 layers of thermal blankets. Her skin was slowly gaining color, less blue now, more gray-violet. The little girl, though, had opened. Her eyes once, no words. Just big, glowing eyes filled with fear. He had tried speaking softly, offering warm broth, but she only stared at him and clung tighter to the woman. Then she fell asleep again, like a kitten curling beside its mother's. Warmth. Eli sat at the edge of the bunk, watching, thinking, why were they out there? He whispered to himself. What kind of people throw a woman and her child into a death storm? He didn't get it. This planet was hard, cold, deadly, but even the worst outlaws wouldn't leave a child to freeze. Not like that. The heater hummed beside them. The power meter blinked red, low fuel. He had enough to keep them warm another day or 2, not much more. The outpost was built for 1 man, not 3 mouths. He stood up, pacing. His communicator blinked. Base command was checking in. They sent daily messages, but he rarely replied. Today he almost answered. He almost told them, 2 aliens, woman and child. Found half dead. Need medical evac. But something stopped him. His hand hovered over the button. His eyes shifted. Back to the small figures under the blanket. What if they were running from something worse? His gut said yes. He moved to the storage locker and pulled out more supplies. Soup packs. Water canisters. A small plush animal he found long ago, an alien-looking bunny with 3 ears. He placed the toy near the child. She didn't move. Then a cough. The woman stirred. Eli froze. Her eyes opened slowly, golden and sharp, flicking side to side like a hunted animal. Her body tensed. She reached to pull the child closer, but cried out her arm was still weak. It's okay, Eli said, raising his hands. You're safe. Her gaze locked on him. She didn't understand the words. But she saw no weapon in his hands. No threat. Still, her lips moved in her language, rough. Alien syllables. Protective. Strong. I don't understand you, Eli said softly, but I'm not your enemy. The woman tried to stand. Her knees gave out. She collapsed on the floor. Eli stepped forward, but she growled an actual growl, low and warning. He stopped, then pointed at the heater. At the child, at the food. Warm, he said. Food. Help. The woman looked at the girl, the toy bunny, the hot cup beside her. She paused. Then, slowly, carefully, crawled back beside her daughter. She smelled the soup, touched the cup. Steam rose into her face. Her lips trembled. She took a tiny sip. Her eyes closed. It was the first warmth she had felt in days. She whispered something to the child. The girl shifted, weak but alive. Eli stepped back, letting her have space. He didn't speak again. He just watched. That night, Eli tried to sleep. But something gnawed at him. Guilt, fear, questions. Who were they? Why were they thrown out? Why did the mother tell him, save her, not me? The next morning, Eli was outside, collecting ice to melt for water. Snow had calmed, but frost still hung thick on every surface. Then he saw it. Footprints. Not his. Not hers. Too large. Too deep and fresh. He dropped the ice bucket. Someone had followed them. Back inside, the woman was awake, sitting near the heater. She held the soup cup close to her face, her hands shaking. The child was still resting, her head in her mother's lap. Eli walked in fast. The woman stood. Alarmed, he pointed at the door. Tracks, outside, big. She tilted her head, not understanding. He grabbed a tablet and drew rough symbols. 2 sets of footprints. Then pointed to the window. Her eyes widened. She said something sharp in her language, then reached into her coat. She pulled out a small, sharp crystal blade. Eli blinked. She had been armed the whole time? She held the blade tightly but didn't raise it at him. Instead, she whispered to her daughter and wrapped her tighter in the blankets. Then she looked Eli in the eyes and nodded. Not thanks, but trust. Only a little. He nodded back, then walked to the door, rifle in hand. He didn't know who or what was out there, but he was ready. They had knocked on his door, half-dead. Now, he was ready to protect them. Because sometimes being human means choosing kindness over caution. The outpost was silent, except for the soft hum of the heater and the quiet crackle of ice melting in a pot. Outside, the storm had slowed to a whisper, but the danger wasn't gone. Ayla checked the door twice and reloaded his rifle. He didn't trust silence anymore. Inside, the alien woman sat beside the heater. Her face was still pale, but her posture was stronger now. Her long dark fingers gently moved through her daughter's frozen hair. She had wrapped the child in every spare cloth and thermal wrap. Eli stood at the other side of the room, watching her without speaking. He had brought more food, water, even a folded mattress for comfort. The woman hadn't said a word, but her eyes followed every movement he made. Then movement. The small bundle stirred. The girl's tiny hand slowly reached out from the layers and twitched in the air like she was searching for something. Her head turned, lips parted. Manatha. The alien woman dropped the soup cup and rushed to her daughter's side. Neva. She gasped, voice shaking. The child blinked slowly, confused, frightened. Her golden eyes were too big for her. Thin face, Neva. The woman whispered again, pressing her forehead to the child's. Eli stepped closer. Quiet. The girl saw him and froze. Her body tensed. Her small hands clenched the blankets tightly. Her breath quickened. The woman tried to calm her, speaking softly, urgently. But the girl's gaze stayed locked on Eli. Her lips moved fast. She spoke a mix of clicks and soft words. Eli didn't understand a thing. Then she screamed. A sharp, sudden cry, like a frightened animal. Eli stepped back, raising his hands. I'm not here to hurt you. But the girl reached into the blanket and pulled out something shiny. A thin shard of glass, maybe broken off her mother's blade. She held it like a weapon, hand shaking. Easy, Eli said gently. I won't touch you. The woman moved between them, arms wide. Speaking firmly to the girl, she slowly lowered the shard. The little one was trembling. Eli walked to a storage crate and pulled out a soft red scarf. He placed it on the floor and backed away. The girl eyed it suspiciously. The mother picked it up and offered it to her daughter, who sniffed it. Then, to Eli's surprise, she clutched it tightly and pressed it to her cheek. It smelled warm, safe, maybe even like kindness. Eli smiled just a little. That's better. The girl finally spoke something clear, soft, unsure. Who, man? Eli blinked. Yeah, human. She looked at her mother. Who, man, no bad? The woman hesitated, then nodded slowly. No bad. Then the girl curled into her mother's side, still holding the scarf. Later that day, Jera Eli had finally learned her name, pointed to herself and said slowly, Jera. Then she pointed to the girl. Neva. Eli repeated, Jera, Neva. Jera tilted her head toward him. Name? He said. Eli. She tried to repeat it. Ali. He smiled. That was close enough. Jera then used her hands and slow words to tell him pieces of her story. Some things he guessed. Others he learned. Their people had cast them out. Neva was born during the Purge, a time when weaker bloodlines were considered worthless. Her small size, her quiet nature, and Jera's low status made them targets. Jera escaped with her daughter and ran for days in the ice. No ship, no help. Only one goal: keep Neva alive, even if she had to die. Eli sat in silence after hearing this. He had always thought aliens were smarter, colder, tougher. But this This was just a mother trying to save her child. It was universal. Later that night, Neva sat up by herself. Still weak, but curious now. She played with the plush bunny Eli had given her. Then she looked at him with big tired eyes and said softly, "Thank." Eli smiled. She didn't say much after that. Just curled beside her mother again. But that one word said enough. As the three of them rested near the heater, a strange peace fell over the small outpost. Eli felt something he hadn't. In months, connection, not to command. Not to duty, but to life. He looked at Jera, who was half asleep, keeping one hand protectively on her daughter. And for the first time, she wasn't watching him like a threat. She trusted him, even if just a little. But outside, under the pale moonlight, the snow shifted again. The footprints from before weren't alone anymore. A second trail had joined them, and it was coming closer. Jera stood in the center of the outpost room. Her tall frame swayed a little, still weak from the cold, but her eyes were clear now, sharp and alert. She held a small blade in her hand, made from crystal and bone. Her body was between Eli and her sleeping daughter. Eli didn't move. He had just finished boiling water for their next meal when she suddenly stood and blocked his path. Her breathing was tight, and her fingers gripped the blade like it was her last defense. "Jera," he said calmly, putting the pan down. "It's okay." She didn't answer. Instead, she took one step forward, then raised her chin like she was waiting for him to try something. Eli raised his hands. "I'm not going to hurt you, or her." She kept staring. But this time, something in her eyes changed. It wasn't fear. It was challenge. She was testing him. Eli pointed to the child. "Neva is safe. I made food. Just food." Jera didn't lower the blade yet. But she looked toward the heater where Neva lay curled in warm blankets, her tiny hand still holding the red scarf. Jera slowly turned her gaze back to him. She said one word. "Why?" Eli blinked. "Why what?" She pointed the blade at her own chest, then to her daughter. "Why help?" Eli exhaled. He didn't have a full answer. "Because I couldn't leave you to freeze. Because no one deserves that." Jera's eyes softened a little. Still guarded, but no longer ready to strike. Her arms dropped. The blade hung at her side. She stepped back and leaned against the wall, sliding slowly to the floor. Her breath was shaky. Her body was still recovering, and that moment of defense had cost her strength. Eli walked to her and placed a steaming cup near her feet. "Drink. It'll help." Jera stared at the cup, then at him. She didn't touch it. "Suit yourself," Eli muttered and walked away, shaking his head. "Alien moms are tougher than steel." He moved to the communication screen, checking for signals. Static, then a broken sound. Faint words. "Package escaped. May have been taken by human unit. Confirm position." Eli froze. He turned the volume down and listened again. The voice wasn't human. And it wasn't from the government. It was slaver talk. Cold, businesslike. They were tracking someone. A package. He didn't need to guess twice who they were talking about. Eli powered off the system and turned around. Jera was watching him. She had understood the voice too. Her face was pale again. "Hunters?" she asked, voice trembling. Eli nodded. Ira moved fast. She crawled to her daughter, picked her up gently, and began wrapping her in layers again. "No," Eli said. "You can't run. Not now. Not in your condition." Jera snapped. "No run. Fight." Her words were sharp, certain. She held her daughter like a shield, but her eyes were that of a warrior. Eli saw it now. She wasn't just a mother. She had training. She had lived through battles. She knew how to protect, and she had already made peace with dying, as long as her daughter lived. Eli stepped beside her. "You won't have to fight alone." Jera blinked. "Why?" Eli looked down at Neva, who had just opened her eyes again. "Because she smiled at me yesterday," he said. and I promised myself I'd keep that smile alive. Jera stared at him for a long moment, then nodded. Together, they began sealing the outpost. Eli handed Jera a shock pistol, old but functional. She tested the weight, then checked the power cell like she'd done it 100 times before. Eli set up motion detectors near the outer walls, small trip lights that would blink red if someone approached. That night, the outpost lights stayed low. Zahra didn't sleep. Neither did Eli. Neva, however, slept peacefully tucked between 2 layers of heat and safety. But far beyond, out in the snowy dunes, shadows moved. 2 figures. One carried a scanner, the other a net gun. They had found the trail. Inside, Jera sat in silence beside her daughter, blade in hand. She whispered something in her language, something that sounded like a prayer. Then she looked at Eli and said, softly, "I fight for her." Eli checked his rifle one last time and replied, "And I'll fight for both of you." And that was all that needed to be said. Because when the cold world turns its back and monsters come in the dark, sometimes family is made from choice, not blood. It began with a faint sound. A tiny click. Then another. Eli opened his eyes instantly. The motion detector near the eastern wall flashed red. Someone had triggered it. He didn't move, didn't speak, just listened. The heater hummed low. Neva breathed softly in her sleep. Jera was already awake, crouched near the window, her blade in one hand, the shock pistol in the other. Her long hair was tied back tight, her gold eyes glowing faintly in the dark. She looked at Eli and whispered, "They're here." Eli nodded once and grabbed his rifle. He moved to the other window and peered through the frosted glass. Nothing. But he could feel it. Something out there was watching. Suddenly, dash bang. A heavy thud hit the back wall. Then silence again. Jera placed Neva under the bunk and covered her with thermal wraps. The child whimpered, but Jera pressed a finger to her lips and whispered in their language, "Quiet, star child." Eli moved toward the back entrance. He had locked it earlier, but now he checked the bolts again. They were still in place, but something had scraped against the door. A claw, maybe. Or metal. Then the lights blinked. Once. Twice. Then darkness. Complete. Black. "Power's gone," Eli whispered. "Sabotage," Jera replied. Eli cursed under his breath. They cut the line. From the darkness outside, a low voice came through a speaker. Cold. Robotic. "Return the female and the child. Human, you have one chance." Jera's hand tightened around the pistol. Eli looked at her. "We're not giving anyone." Then came the blast. Boom. An explosion ripped the front door clean off its hinges. Smoke and ice flew everywhere. Eli dove behind the metal table. Jera pulled Neva deeper under the bed and rolled to the corner with her weapon ready. 2 figures stormed in tall, armored with night vision helmets and long capture rods. They scanned fast. "There!" One barked. Eli fired first. His rifle crackled, hitting the closest figure in the chest. The impact knocked the man back into the wall. Jera moved like lightning. She leapt over the heater, landed low, and fired her shock pistol. The second invader shrieked as electricity jolted through his body. But a third figure slipped in behind them, a tall, muscular brute with metal claws and a glowing red eye. He spotted Neva under the bunk and roared, "Target located." Jera screamed and charged. She stabbed the blade deep into the brute's side. He howled and swung his arm, hitting her and slamming her against the wall. Eli rushed him, using the butt of his rifle to break the brute's red visor. Sparks flew. Jera struggled to her feet, blood on her lip, but she wasn't done. She reached for a hot metal rod near the heater and jammed it into the brute's back. He fell, twitching. Eli panted hard, aiming around the room. No more attackers came in. Then silence, real silence, the kind that rings in your ears after a battle. The outpost was a mess. Smoke hung in the air. Ice melted slowly from the explosion. But the three intruders were down and Neva was untouched. Jera crawled to her daughter and held her close. Neva shook but didn't cry. Her tiny hand grabbed her mother's sleeve and didn't let go. Eli sat down, sweat dripping from his face, rifle still in his hands. Jera looked at him, eyes wide, breathing hard. "You fought." "For us," she said slowly. Eli nodded. "Of course I did." She moved closer to him and knelt. Her voice was quiet, but serious. "You could have let them take us." "You didn't." "I couldn't," Eli replied. "No one deserves to be hunted like that." She touched his shoulder. A soft gesture, strange but not unfamiliar. In her world, it meant something deep. Trust. Bond. Eli didn't say anything, but he felt it. This wasn't just survival anymore. This was family forming where none had existed before. Suddenly, Neva spoke. She stood up, her voice small but strong. "You are Hope." Both adults looked at her. Jera blinked. Surprised. Eli smiled. It was the first time she had spoken a full sentence in his language. Neva looked up at him and repeated, "You are Hope." He knelt and hugged her gently. Outside, the wind picked up again. The storm was returning, but inside the broken outpost, three souls sat close together. A mother, a daughter, and a human who refused to let them be taken. They were bruised, but they were not broken. Asterisk. The sky turned gray. Morning came slowly to the frozen land, but inside the outpost, no one slept. Eli stood at the smashed front door, his rifle across his chest, eyes fixed on the snowy hills. The battle from the night still echoed in his head. Gunfire, screams, Neva's tiny voice saying, "You are Hope." Behind him, Jera tended to the wounds on her arm. The burn from the brute's claw was deep, but she didn't complain. She only winced when she moved too fast. Neva helped wrap the bandage, her small fingers trembling, but her face calm. "She's stronger than she looks," Eli said quietly. Jera looked up. "She had to be," he nodded, "like her mother." Jera said nothing, but her gaze softened. That morning, the silence between them wasn't heavy anymore. It felt calm, familiar. Until the radio crackled. Eli turned fast. The signal wasn't alien this time, it was human. "Outpost 9, this is Central Command, respond." He picked up the comm and answered, "This is Eli, I'm here. We've tracked energy spikes and weapon fire from your location." "Are you under attack?" Eli hesitated. Jera was watching him, he replied. "There was a raid last night. 3 hostiles neutralized." "Are you alone?" He paused again. This time longer. Then, "Yes, still alone." There was a silence on the other end. "Copy that. A patrol team will reach you by sunset. Stay secure." The signal cut. Jera stood up slowly. "They're coming?" Eli nodded. "Yes, human soldiers, my people." Jera didn't look relieved. Her hand moved to her weapon. "They'll take US, maybe," Eli said. "If they find out." Jera stared at him. "You should let them." "You don't owe us anything." Eli turned to her. "No, I don't, but I'm not letting them take you. Either of you." She frowned. "Even if it costs you your life?" He gave a tired smile. "Some things are worth it." Jera walked to him, close now. She looked at him with a strange intensity. "Why?" Eli took a breath, then said, "Because you didn't leave your daughter behind, even when death was chasing you. Because you fought harder than I've seen any soldier fight. And because Neva called me Hope." Jera looked down at the floor. Her hand trembled just slightly. "I don't know your world," Eli continued, "but in mine, there's a word for people who choose others before themselves. Family." Jera looked up again. She whispered, "You would call us family?" Eli nodded. "If you'll let me." A quiet passed between them. Then she whispered something in her native tongue. a word he didn't understand. She touched her forehead, then lightly placed her palm over his chest. Jera had just offered him a bond, a sacred vow in her culture. It wasn't marriage. It wasn't romance. It was something older, a promise to protect and stand beside each other, no matter what came next. Eli placed his hand over hers. He accepted it. Later, they moved fast. Eli helped Jera and Neva pack only what they needed: food, warm clothes, a few tools. Then he showed them a small service tunnel under the outpost. It led out to the frozen ridge and into the forest line out of view. If they come, he told them, use this. I'll stay and send them away. Jera shook her head. We won't leave you. Eli looked at her firmly. You will. If I say run, you run. Got it? She didn't like it. But finally, she agreed. As the sun began to dip, snow vehicles appeared. On the hill, human soldiers in gray armor, faces cold, weapons ready. Their captain stepped forward, scanning the damaged outpost. You said you were under attack? The captain asked. Eli nodded. 3 raiders, I handled it. The captain raised an eyebrow. Alone? Yeah. He handed over a data chip with fake logs. The captain studied it. Then asked, any survivors? No, Eli said without blinking. I buried the bodies. The captain didn't look convinced. He walked inside, glancing around. He saw 2 used blankets, 2 sets of small footprints. Then he stared at Eli. Are you hiding someone? Eli's hand twitched near his rifle, but before he could answer, Neva's small voice echoed from the tunnel. Eli. The captain spun around. Eli closed his eyes for half a second, then stepped in front of the tunnel entrance. She's a child, Eli said. Let me explain. The captain drew his weapon. Stand aside. But Jera burst from the side, blade in hand. Stay away from my daughter. She shouted. Everything froze. Eli stepped between both of them. No one's hurting anyone. He said loudly, you want to shoot me? Fine, but I won't let you touch them. The captain stared at him, then at Jera, then at the child peeking out behind her mother. Finally, he lowered his weapon. Turn off your signal, the captain said. You're not here anymore. Eli blinked. What? You're gone. Off-grid. Outpost destroyed. As far as command knows. You're dead. Eli's voice cracked. Why? The captain shrugged. Because I saw a mother protect her child. And I saw a man ready to die for them. That's enough for me. He turned and walked away. Within minutes, the snow vehicles vanished into the teal fog. Eli stood still, stunned. Zieira walked up behind him, voice quiet. You stayed. He looked at her. And now, I'm free. Just like you. And for the first time, Jera smiled. The wind was gentle now. For the first time in days, the sky above the frozen land was clear. Pale sunlight spilled across the ice, turning the snow into silver. The world was still cold, but not cruel anymore. Eli stood outside the wrecked outpost, his breath forming soft clouds in the air. Beside him stood Jera, wrapped in layers of cloth and furs. Her wounds had healed into faint scars. Her eyes were calm now, no longer searching for danger. Neva ran in wide circles around them, her feet crunching in the snow. She laughed a real laugh, her voice echoing through the hills. She chased a floating piece of cloth Eli had tied to a stick, calling it her skybird. Jera watched her daughter with silent joy. Her hands were folded, but her body relaxed. She hasn't laughed like that since we were exiled. Jera said softly. Eli smiled. She has more than enough reason to smile now. They had moved to an old abandoned shelter in the far northern forest. It was hidden between ice cliffs and hard to find unless someone knew exactly where to look. It had heat, water, and safety, and it had become a home. 3 weeks had passed since the soldiers left. No one had come looking. Eli had kept his signal turned off. To the world, he no longer existed. and he was fine with that. Inside the shelter, Ele had built a small table from broken wood panels. Over it, he placed 3 bowls every night, one for him, one for Gera, one for Neva. Some days were quiet. Others were filled with laughter. Neva had started learning human words quickly. She would run to Eli every morning with her small notebook and ask, "This word what?" pointing at leaves, food, snow, even Eli's beard. Gera, though still careful, had become more open. She shared more about her people, their old traditions, and the day she made the choice to save her daughter, knowing it might cost her life. "Most in my world choose survival first," she told Eli one night. "But I chose love." Eli had answered, "You didn't just survive, you created something stronger." Their bond had grown. No one spoke of romance, no need. What they had was something different, deeper. One night around the small fire, Neva asked a question. "Are we pack?" Gera and Eli looked at each other. Eli said, "Better than a pack." "We're family," Neva beamed. "Family, I like that word." That night, she slept curled between them, her little arms stretched across both adults, like she was holding the world together. And in many ways, she was. But peace couldn't last forever. One morning, while Eli was hunting for supplies, he found a strange shape in the snow, a small drone. Broken and half buried. Its light still blinked. He brought it back, nervous. Gera examined it. "It's old. A scout. Likely leftover from a crash. Not active." But Eli knew better. Technology always came with risk. That evening, after dinner, Eli sat beside Gera outside the shelter. Neva was already asleep. He looked up at the stars. "If someone comes one day, if they find us, what will we do?" Gera didn't answer at first. Then she placed her hand over his. "We don't run, we protect." Eli turned to her. "Even if it's dangerous?" "Yes," she said, eyes glowing. "Because now we have something worth protecting." Eli leaned back, eyes half closed. "I never thought I'd find this. Not in the cold. Not at the edge of the galaxy." "You didn't find it," she said. "You created it." They sat in silence. Then Gera whispered something in her language. Eli looked over. "What did that mean?" She smiled. "It means light in the ice." He grinned. "I like that." As the stars shone above and the cold winds softened, the shelter behind them stood strong. Inside it, warmth glowed, not just from heat, but from hearts that had chosen trust over fear, love over survival, and hope over silence. The frozen night had taken so much from them, but in the end, it had given something back. A future, a family. And a warm tomorrow. The end.